Good morning, everyone, and I welcome you all to this every Sunday uh, YIT meeting. And before starting, we will start with the universal invocation. O hidden light, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is therefore one with every other. Let's observe silence for a couple of minutes. Okay, welcome back. So, our today's topic is nature of memory, and our speaker is Sister Vibha Saksena. She is a national lecturer of the Indian section. She is the secretary of Noida Lodge. Professionally, she is a software engineer. She has completed her MTech in computer science from JNU University, Delhi. She has completed in her education in Pune and Delhi and made her career in IT with TCS. Alongside her career, she pursued deep self-study in science and philosophy. She joined Theosophical Society in 2015. She has given theosophical lectures at different lodges, federations, and international conventions. She firmly believes the greatest service one can do for the world is self-transformation. According to her, nothing makes her more happy than if someone can benefit by her sharing their knowledge of theosophy. And frankly speaking, I came to know her when I heard her the study class in Mahatma Letters every Friday, and her talks are so simple. I mean, it was so it. I understood masters. Mahatma Letters so. I mean, easily. And after that, I came to know that. I heard her name previously, but after that, I could know that she is a very great speaker also. So let's welcome her. Sister, over to you now.
Thank you so much, Smitaji, for those kind words. And it's not about knowing something very high. It is just about sharing the understanding which we gain as we, continue this journey in philosophy. So yes, it is true. I feel happy if I can explain something and someone can benefit from it. And so namaste to all of you and welcome. Thank you for coming to this session. And today we are examining this very enigmatic aspect of our being, our memory. I think this is the most important aspect, our memory. It is the most important aspect of our being, but it is the least understood it. Perhaps even the medical science does not understand it to its full extent. Okay. Now, you see, all of you are here today because you would have got that message that tomorrow is this lecture. I am here today because I remembered that, yes, today I have to give this lecture. So you see what? Memory is at play at every second in our life. I did not forget that I have to come here for the lecture. If I had forgotten, I wouldn't be here. So life would be kind of so chaotic if we were not to remember our things. Now, what exactly is memory? Simply, if we think about it, memory is nothing but the ability to recall. When we say recall, it means something which has already happened, something which we learned, some experience that we have had in the past. So, okay, before I move further, I would also like to share my slides on the same. Okay, so this memory is such an enigma. This helps us to recall what we have already learned or experienced, or that which we know. When we say that it is about something which we have already learned or which we already know, it means that something has been stored.
10:30 से थी, मैंने मीटिंग बीच में ज्वाइन कर भी ली थी.
So memory involves the storage of knowledge and its recall, because you can recall something which you have already experienced, right? But sometimes it so happens that we forget what we had experienced in the past. Suppose if we meet a person, we can remember his face, but it is very difficult to remember his name. The name might be on the tip of our tongue, but we are not able to recall it. So many times that happens to all of us, I think. Especially remembering names is a tricky thing. In the exam, students who appear for exams, they have learned her answer very well, but at the moment they see that question in the exam paper and they try to recollect what they had learned, so it becomes tricky. So forgetting memory, even though memory is there, even though something has been experienced, why are we forgetting? Okay, that is another aspect of memory. Then this is about recalling things which we have experienced. Another interesting aspect about memory is it seems to be an essential aspect of our identity. It allows us to remember that I am I. Now, if I speak about all of us, we speak about basically the personality that we are. So we say, I am Vibha, you will say you are, and whatever is your name. So it helps us to remember that I am I. Memory is like our biography, an unwritten biography, which contains everything that we have done, that we know, that we have learned. Okay, it is our personal identity, and this personal identity, it remains continuous even through our sleep. While we are sleeping, at that time we have no memory, we are not recalling anything. But when we wake up, we do not forget ourselves. We still remember that I am I. Okay, and if somebody does forget that who they are, it means they have amnesia, right? It's a medical term, amnesia. Okay, this is as far as our physical identity is concerned. What about our spiritual identity? The real I. That is spiritual amnesia. Everyone has forgotten the real I. Okay, but for the present, we will just focus on this physical identity. Okay, so now how I have structured this talk is, first we will see what medical science has to say about memory. Okay, then we will see the philosophical aspects of memory, and after that we will see the theosophical view on memory. Okay, so this is how I'm going to proceed. So let us begin with what medical science has to say about what, where, and how of human memory. So in scientific terms, we said that memory is nothing but it is the encoding, the storage, and the retrieval of information. If memory has to be stored, it needs to be encoded in some format. So before storing it, there is an encoding. Then there is storage, and after that, it is a recall or a retrieval. So it is a recollection of something which is in the past. And our brain is considered as the archive of the memory. This memory, it defines who we are. It defines everything about us, our behavior, our perceptions, our beliefs. They are all a function of memory. Our ordinary tasks, the daily things which we take for granted, getting up, brushing, cooking, walking, going, talking, everything. We take it for granted, but it is a function of memory. There are medical cases when people, they suffer a head injury, they forget the basic tasks. They have to learn again how to walk. They have to learn again how to brush, how to eat. Okay, so these daily tasks also, they are a function of our memory. Learning a language, it's a function of memory. So these are complex tasks. Learning a language and learning a new skill, these are all complex tasks. All of these are also based on memory. Now, everything we cannot remember, we can't keep in our brain. So what do we do to help us? We write it down. And what is writing? It is nothing but it is storage. Language is the encoding, and putting it on the paper is storage. So we encode it. We can write in any language, Hindi, English, Marathi, German, French. So that is encoding, in which language you're writing, and then you're storing it on paper. The same thing goes for automated memory, like computer storage. In some magnetic media, on a hard disk, on a CD drive, or on some pen drive, data is encoded and it is stored. And then it can be retrieved. So what about the human memory? These are all external storages on paper or on some digital device. But what about human memory? So what does medical science have to say about that? Obviously, the brain comes into picture. The brain is responsible for experiencing, for storing, and for retrieving. But this memory is not stored as a picture in the brain. Medical science tells us that it is an electrically encoded representation of fact. Now, this is very important, what the basic function of human beings, it is happening through these electrical impulses. And electricity is energy. Okay, it has a very far-reaching implication when you go on to understand the real self. Okay, but we are not getting into that. We are just saying memory is an electrically encoded representation of facts. You can see here the brain, how it is divided into these different parts or the lobes. The frontal lobe, which is the front part of our brain inside the skull. Then the top part, which is the parietal lobe. And at the back, you have the occipital lobe for vision, for seeing. The temporal lobe is at the side, which helps in hearing. Okay, and the middle part, the parietal lobe, it helps in touch and taste. So different parts of brain are associated with these different sensory functions. Basically, the 5 senses. So memories are not stored in any one location, because you just think about it. Any experience you had, suppose you had a very good breakfast today, you ate something. So that will have a touch, a texture in your mouth. It will have a taste. It will have a appearance, how it looked, a very pleasing, very good, very appetizing. So that visual aspect also it has. You see, many senses come into play, and all the senses, they are in the different parts of the brain. So it is very easy to understand that memory is not just one picture which gets stored somewhere in the brain. Rather, the entire brain area with its different sensory regions, it comes into play. Okay. So what exactly is happening behind it? It is the cells of the brain, which are called the neurons. These neurons, they communicate with each other through their branches. You can see the two orange cells. They are the neurons, and they have these finger-like branches, which are called dendrites. Okay. So the electrical impulses are passed between them. Two neurons, they communicate with each other through this longer connection, which is called the axon. So the axon of one neuron, it connects to the branches or to the dendrites of the other neuron. Dendrites are these orange branches. And the connection of that junction is called the synapse. Okay. So at the junction, at the synapse, that is where the communication happens. And this connection is through electrical impulse. Now, how electrical impulse comes? This I'm getting into a technical detail. You need not bother. It's okay. But I'll just let you know. It is by the ions. We have these neurotransmitters, the sodium ions and the potassium ions. Sodium and potassium are metals. They are electrolytes. Electrolyte balance in our body is very crucial. So they are not neutral. They are ionized, meaning they have a charge. Okay. A positive charge. The sodium ion, then it is not called an atom. Atom is neutral. It has no charge. But when it loses its electron, then it becomes positively charged. So that is called an ion, the sodium ion and the potassium ion. And by transmitting this across the membrane of the axon and the dendrite, there is a jump of that charge. That is the electrical impulse. Okay. So that is how electricity or electrical impulse are the basic carriers of communication within our brain cells. This communication between neurons is electrochemical. Okay. And so memory, what does it involve? It involves changes that occur in these connections of neurons. And it happens as a result of our experience. As we keep experiencing things, these connections, they keep changing. New patterns are being formed and being impressed on the brain cells. Okay, so the more we repeat our experience, the more we practice it, this imprint gets reinforced. That is why practice helps memory. Okay, it reinforces the synapses, the junctions of the neuron. And perhaps even new connections, even new this synapses between the neurons can be formed. That is why many people say that in old age, keep your brain active, keep on practicing something so that new connections keep getting formed. Okay. Now, when we recall memory, so recalling memory, it is a mental effort. When we exert this mental effort, then our memories are triggered. We can recall it by this mental effort, and also the five senses, they play an important role. Maybe a particular sense can trigger your memory. For example, if you like the smell of something very much, you visited some place, some garden where there were many flowers. So that sense of smell, if you smell the same flowers again, it will trigger the memory of you having visited that particular place. So senses play a very important role in triggering our memory. Okay. But as I told you that this physiology and neurology involved in this process of communication, in the process of storing and retrieving memory, it is very complex and technical. Even the medical science does not completely understand it. Okay. So let's move further to how it is classified. Now, this is again from a medical perspective. Memory is classified as immediate memory, that is sensory memory, a passing glance. You are traveling, maybe you're riding your two-wheeler or you're driving your car. So many things you just pass by. They come into your vision, in your field of vision, and they pass by. So sensory memory or immediate memory. Then you have a short-term memory. Short-term memory is about small information stored for a short duration of time. For example, where did I keep my car keys or my house keys? Most of us forget and we keep searching for the key. Okay, short-term memory. And then you have the long-term memory. Long-term memory is that which you remember things about your past of a longer duration. For example, things which you have learned, which you can tell others by speaking them. So it is declarative or explicit memory. Events which you have experienced. Also, concepts, knowledge which you have learned. So this is the semantic aspect. That means a student who writes an exam, he has learned something, he can recall it and he can write it. So something which you can speak, tell, or write, which you have experienced in the past. The other part of long-term memory is implicit, non-declarative, meaning you're not going to speak it or write it out, but you are going to show how it is to be done. For example, skills. Let's take, for example, these vocational skills. A person is learning how to make a pot, pottery. So if I tell you, oh, you should take clay and put it on the pot and then mold it with your hands, that is not going to work. So how do I show you? I actually turn the wheel and then I put the clay and I show it to you by molding it. So skills which you have to show and do. Now I remember how to mold a pot. That is why I'm able to show it to you. Another example, riding a bicycle. Just by telling that, oh, you sit on the bicycle, hold the handle and pedal, it's not going to work. So somebody has to actually show you how to ride it. So these are non-declarative or the implicit memory, which is there in you. Once you learn to ride a bicycle, you're never going to forget. Once you learn to swim, you're never going to forget. Okay. And the other part of non-declarative memory is the emotional conditioning. For example, the moment you, you remember how your mother used to, or your grandmother used to cook something very nice, your favorite dish. The moment you think of that, your mouth will start watering. Okay. So that memory is triggering. This is a conditioning. Your senses are conditioned the moment you, excuse me. Okay. So memory works in different ways. Okay. Now, memory can be improved. Memory can also deteriorate. Why this happens? Because there are two aspects of memory. The first is that it has to be stored somewhere. So it requires a media. Even if it is getting stored as electrical patterns in our brain, so it requires the brain tissue. Okay, that is the substance or the media. And the second factor, it is the mind. The mind, our awareness, which is going to recall and interpret those impressions. So accuracy of our memory, it will depend on how durable those impressions are. Those impressions or the brain cells, they should not be damaged, not be decayed. Excuse me. Okay, so the storage media, that is one part, durability of the impressions which are stored on that. And the second factor is the sharpness of the mind. If your mind is not functioning to the full capacity, it is unable to recall. So sharpness of the mind is the second factor on which accuracy of your memory will depend. Now, naturally, if anything happens to either of the two, then memory will be impaired. If the mind is not sharp, or if the impressions are not persistent, brain tissue is damaged then. So this impairment of memory, it results in difficulty in recalling or remembering. You may not remember accurately what has been experienced. But the brain is very, what to say? It is very, it can improvise. And that is where imagination comes into picture. The person cannot recollect, but he starts imagining. He may not remember, did I attend a particular event on a particular date? But the brain might imagine that, yes, he was present and he did attend that event. Okay, so imagination is another aspect. It's a very creative aspect. But sometimes it is not portraying the fact. When we want the facts, we need memory, not imagination. But imagination is very good aspect for artists and people involved in the creative fields. So to improve the memory, it is necessary that the mind remains sharp, it remains focused, and it remains attentive. Okay. So this is as far as the sharpness of the mind is concerned. For this, there are many exercises which can help. Many people, they practice meditation. Many people practice yoga. We teach children also about mindfulness. That means whenever you are practicing anything, keep your full attention, give your 100% to the present moment. All these things help to focus the mind and make it sharp. One aspect. Second aspect, keep the brain tissue in good health, which means the physical and mental activities which you perform, they help to maintain health of the brain tissue. Have a good sleep. Sleep factor is very important in memory. Keep a healthy diet. Food affects every cell of your body. Exercises, these also affect the body health. So all these factors, they will contribute to good health and to good memory. So two things you are doing, keeping the brain tissue in good health and keeping the mind focused and sharp. That is what helps to maintain good memory. Now, scientists, they speak of one more thing. It has very recently come into picture. I hope you can see. It is called the Sanskrit effect. Have you heard of Sanskrit effect? Let me tell you. There is this magazine called Scientific American. I'm sure many of you read it. So in 2018, it was reported in that memorizing the Vedic mantras by chanting them aloud, It increases the size of brain regions which are associated with this memory functions or the cognitive functions. Okay. It improves both short-term memory and long-term memory. Okay. So that is called the Sanskrit effect. The effects of the sound of the Sanskrit mantra when you chant them verbally, intensively. Okay. So this leads to enhanced memory. Although they have not reached any conclusive experimental results, but they have observed this. And this was published in that magazine in Scientific American. Okay, so you can imagine that what good effect it has to speak in Sanskrit, to learn Sanskrit shlok and mantra, and to chant them morning, evening, whenever we do puja or anything. This Sanskrit is a very, very scientific language, and it is having this effect on the well-being of ourselves, on our memory. Now, this is as far as the scientific views are concerned. Let us look into the philosophical view of memory. At the first glance, as we saw in the medical aspect, memory seemed a function of mind. But we know that it is closely related to consciousness, because mind is nothing but it is a function of consciousness. When we remember something, we are conscious about it. We become aware of it. Even though we do not actively recall everything that might have happened in our early days or in things which are long in the past, but still they are there in our memory. They remain in our consciousness. Okay. When we say that I remember something, it means that there is something or someone who is perceiving. He is the subject who has the capability to perceive, to recall that object or the experience. So perceiver and his capability to recall, this is what is directly relating to our consciousness, or what we call our self. Okay. Consciousness may be active, it may be latent, both the aspects of consciousness. Active means it is our present awareness of things, everything which we are coming in contact with now. And latent is our subconscious. It is the unconscious state of mind. Sometimes we forget things, but what we have forgotten, that has not really passed out of our consciousness. It has become latent, and maybe in some circumstances, it may be recalled, which means that on the mental plane, no experience is ever destroyed. Everything which has come into consciousness at any time, it will leave a trace on the mind. Leaving a trace on the mind, this is called chitta vritti, what we read in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. And cessation of chitta vritti is yoga. But now we don't want to seize that, we want to recall that. So recalling those traces which are left on the mind. Recalling that traces which are left on the mind, they can be either reproduced by the memory or they can be recollected. So memory has this peculiar trait that it can reproduce whatever was experienced without recollection. What does this mean? To reproduce the same trace of events without having a recollection. What it means is that an image of the past perception, something which you had perceived in the past, that same image, it will appear again in your consciousness, but it will appear as new. Okay, so memory can be reproduced either in the waking state or in the dream state. A very interesting example was given by Annie Besant. She said that there was a person, he was requested to write some article for a magazine. It was a political article based on some political economy. He wrote it, but he never sent the sheets to the publisher, and he forgot about it. Now, after a long time, those people, the publishers, they approached him again to send that article. He completely forgot that he had written the article, so he wrote it once again and he sent it. The article got published. Now, again, after a few months passed, while he was cleaning his desk in the drawer, he found those articles which he had written in the first time. And when he read this, the articles which he wrote for the first time, he found that the words were almost the exact words which he wrote when he wrote the article the second time. So what this means that the ideas and words of the first essay, they remained in his memory, they remained in his subconscious, and they were reproduced in his second attempt without any actual recollection. They were simply reproduced. So they came as new, but they were actually already there in his memory. Okay. So Annie Besant says that we do not know how much of our dreams or how much of our waking state is a reproduction. It is not possible to gauge it. Some things might have already been in our consciousness. They are coming again, but we are not aware of it. We think that they are new. So the underlying message is that everything that once enters our consciousness, it will leave a trace upon it, never to fade. Okay. Now, another interesting thing, we can see that as we age, our memory changes, memory patterns change. Memory in the very aged or dying people, it represents one extraordinary degree of recollection. Sometimes they recollect things of their long past life, childhood life. There are numerous cases about these, that people who are dying or who are having this near-death experience, they do not actually die, and that is why they are revived back and they can come back to tell us about their experience. They narrate that their whole existence seems to pass before their eyes. They can see their whole eyes of life in minute detail of every trifling act, which normally is forgotten. Normally we will not remember, but at that moment, it flashes before their eyes in a matter of seconds. Also on people who are very old, almost on their deathbed, sometimes they have these vivid memories, which are long forgotten incidents of their childhood. Whereas the more recent memories, that they will not remember. They might even start forgetting their own near and dear ones. They may not recognize their family members, but they are able to recall things of their very early life also. So this, again, it points to the fact that every experience, even if it is forgotten at present for the moment, but it still remains in our consciousness. And it resurfaces, as in these cases of the people who are nearly going to die or in their dreaming consciousness. So this brings us to the spectrum of consciousness, because what we are saying is that anything that has passed through our consciousness, it never fades, it remains, but we remember only part of it. So this brings us to a spectrum, a whole wide spectrum of consciousness, just like we have a light spectrum. We can see only a visible part, violet to red. We have a sound spectrum. It extends to both the sides, but we can hear in the audible range only, which is from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Similarly, there is a consciousness spectrum. The impressions of all the experience that have ever occurred, they are retained. So that is the entire consciousness spectrum. But we can recollect only those which are above a certain threshold. So this is important. There is a threshold of consciousness. Anything above that threshold, we remember. Anything below that is still there in consciousness, but we do not recollect. Now, what is a significant thing about the threshold is that the threshold itself shifts up and down. Okay, and this is what allows us to remember things which we have previously forgotten. Okay, they appear in active consciousness if the threshold moves up or down. Now, these cases which we saw earlier, sleep, extreme sickness, insanity, or even near-death cases, such states cause our consciousness threshold to shift. Okay. Also, we notice there are incidents or events when the memory is exalted, like in hypnotism. A person is able to recall his past things or so many other things. People having split personality, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, classic example. Okay, so he behaves and he recalls or perceives things when he is in one personality. And when he behaves as a second personality, he has a second set of memories and behavior and things. Okay, so even cases of selective amnesia, where people forget only certain things, but they remember other things. So there are many psychological conditions which are dependent on this shift of the consciousness threshold. Psychologists and psychoanalysts, they will do very good if they study what is this threshold of consciousness. And we can understand this with much clarity with the help of theosophical teachings. Okay, so what does theosophy tell us about consciousness? What is this threshold of consciousness? Let us have a look at that. So remember, everything in theosophy boils down to the constitution of man. We are a living, moving laboratory in which all these phenomena are happening. And our consciousness, it works through these 7 sheets on the 7 planes, the 7 planes of the solar system. On each of this plane, we have a vehicle, which we call a body. It is made out of the matter of that plane, and consciousness works through that. Therefore, each of this body, because it is made of different matter, so it varies in subtleness, in density. And this density, it imposes a limitation on the expression of our knowledge, on the expression of our power. Okay. Physical matter is most dense and it places the highest limitation. Buddhic matter is least dense. That body is least limiting. Buddhi is the universal principle. Okay, so the matter of each of these sheets, it is continually vibrating, and knowledge is acquired on each of these planes through the impression on the substance of these planes. What is substance? It is the matter with which our bodies are made. You see, even on the physical plane, it is the physical cell and the electrical encoding in the physical cells. Okay, so that is the impression on the matter of that body. Just as it is imprinted on our physical body, it will also be imprinted on our astral, mental, buddhic, and any other higher body. Okay. This buddhic matter. Okay, now I told you that on the physical plane, it is the brain cells which are impressed. Okay, on the astral plane, corresponding to our physical sense organs, there are astral sense organs. On the astral sense organs, they will sense, they will perceive. If you go higher to the mental plane, the mental body, it doesn't have separate sense organs. The body as a whole, it acquires the impression of the object. That is what is said, that when you think or perceive something, your mental body, it assumes the form of that object. Okay, because mental matter is very tenuous, very subtle. What we mean by tenuous? Okay, take example of physical matter. Solid matter, it will not change shape. Liquid matter will change shape. It will take the shape of the vessel in which you pour it. Gaseous matter, even if you just blow air, you do, the smoke will disperse. Okay, so if the physical matter is so tenuous, like gas, which can just disperse, can you imagine how tenuous the mental matter is? By applying a very small amount of energy, the mental energy, that matter changes shape. Okay, so that is how it is impressed with whatever perceptions are there. And Buddhic matter, Buddhi is universal. Buddhic matter, it is illumined by the light of Atma. Okay, so it is the plane of all the truths. It is omniscient. Now, I will not go into the detail of the 7 principles. I explained to you about the constitution of man. We know that the principles, the lower 4 form our personality, and the higher 3, they form our upper triad. Okay, Atma, Buddhi, Manas. And we work on the lower 5 planes of the 7 solar planes. Okay, because now we are short of time and there is a lot that I want to cover. So we go to the subjective and objective aspect of memory. The objective aspect is the vibration of the matter and impressions on it. So this is encoding and storing of the memory. And the subjective aspect is, it is our consciousness. It is the ability to gather and read those impressions in a particular grade of matter. So this is recollection of memory. And remember, I told you now, this doesn't happen only at physical level. It happens on the level of all the planes, because we have a vehicle or a body on every plane of matter. So the ability to recollect this memory, it is limited by the density of that matter. It varies from person to person. And for example, an adept, he can work in full consciousness even at the higher mental or buddhic levels. Okay. And for another person, he might only be able to recall physical memories. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have memories at the higher level, but he cannot recall them. So this brings us to our universal self and the individual self. The memory impressions which we receive by our physical consciousness, they not only come from external perceptions. External perceptions means the five senses, like seeing an apple, smelling a rose, hearing a song. These are all external stimulus. Okay. Once we hear that, we will have a memory of that. So this is external stimulus. But memory also comes from internal stimulus. Internal stimulus is the vibrations which are conveyed from the higher subtle planes down to our physical body. And this is the spiritual implication of memory. This is most important. Spiritual implication of memory is that memory does not only come from the external stimulus, but also from the internal stimulus. That means vibrations conveyed from the higher or subtler planes down to our physical body. To understand this, we will proceed from universal to particular, like Theosophy does always. So universal self is Brahma. It is regarded as the changeless, omnipresent, omnipotent reality, which means this universal consciousness, it pervades everything. It has all the power and all the knowledge. Knowledge is memory. It has all the power and all the knowledge, meaning it has all the memory. It is the sum total of consciousness or sum total of memory in the universe. Of course, it is much more, but here we are talking of memory. Now consider the individual self. Individual self is the immortal ego of each person, Atma, Buddhi, Manas. This individual person is an individual unit of consciousness within that universal consciousness. So universal consciousness is sum total of memory. An individual person or individual unit of consciousness is within the universal consciousness. So there are these possibilities as his innermost essence, because the innermost essence of the individual unit is same as the universal self. So there is a possibility of acquiring that memory. Okay, instead of being a limited individual self which has a limited memory, there is a possibility of acquiring the global or the universal knowledge or memory, because of the innermost essence being same. So what is said is that everything exists in the individual self potentially, whereas everything exists in the one self or the universal self actually. Whatever is actually present in the memory of the logos, it is present in our individual self potentially. Okay. This entire universe, everything that is there within the universe, it is there in the memory of the logos in the eternal now. It is there. That is what is called eternal now. What do you understand by eternal now? That for him, everything is a truth right now, right here. There is no past, present, future. But when the individual unit, the self, puts on these vehicles after vehicles, the bodies on the 7 planes, that matter, the density of that matter, it limits his ability of that all pervasiveness and the all knowingness. And narrowing it down to the physical plane, he is able to perceive only through his 5 sense organs. Okay, so he is able to perceive, and therefore he is able to recall, which becomes a function of an external stimulus only, because the 5 sense organs, they are external stimulus. Okay, whereas actually at the highest level, everything is present in the memory, in the eternal now, here and now. So the question arises of perception and remembrance. And our spiritual progress determines how much of ourself we remember. It is a remembrance of ourself, our memory when we call. Okay, and this fact is most stressed in our scriptures, that recognize that which you already are. You don't have to become something, you already are that, and that is what you need to recognize or recall. One of the masters of wisdom, he said that any individual can make spiritual progress on the higher planes without having a physical remembrance. For example, when we go to sleep, we are in the state of deep sleep. So the mind is not working. There are no mental changes, no change in consciousness at the mental level. But in the deep sleep level also, the consciousness is still working. It is aware on the higher spiritual planes. But when we wake up, we have no memory, no perception of it. Why? To understand this, we must know how perceptions are caused and how remembrance is caused. So perceptions, they arise because if we consider the external stimulus, so the sense objects, they go inwards via various bodies. They send these vibrations through our various bodies to the self. Okay?
Everyone knows from Smitapragyan.
So this perception is impressed upon the matter of various sheath by the inward going vibrations. And remembrance happens by the power of awareness, which is rippling outwards. So it ripples outwards from the self or from the consciousness, causing a recollection of memory. The external sense impressions, they come from our sense organs, hearing, touch, sight, smell. Okay, they run up from our physical body to our astral body to our mental body. And then the mental body, it synthesizes the impression received into a single perception or a thought, the entire mental body. Now, our true self, it is rooted in buddhi. Okay, we call that our spiritual individuality. Personal individuality is Atma, Buddhi, Manas. But spiritual individuality is Atma, Buddhi, or the monad. So the remembrance of the true self, it depends on the sensitivity, purity, and the fineness of matter of these intervening vehicles. The mental, astral, and physical, through which our vibrations have to pass. And they have to finally impress upon the physical brain cells. Now here, remembrance, I'm talking about the internal vibrations, okay, which are running down from Atma Buddhi, from that monad, and they have to reach the physical cells. But depending on the coarseness of the mental and astral and physical matter, those vibrations may either reach the physical or may not reach the physical. Okay. As these vibrations pass from the Buddhic level to the physical level, a little power is exhausted at each step when it comes to the next lower level. So there is a gradual decline in the vibration because a little energy is lost. Ultimately, it may so happen that it cannot vibrate the physical cells. The power is totally lost. But if this matter was very fine, very sensitive, then those vibrations from the Buddhic level, they would have been able to pass and impress on the physical cells. Okay, so this is the reason that hardly any recollection of spiritual experiences are possible. It is not that we are not progressing spiritually. When we are trying and we are working sincerely, making sincere effort, spiritual progress is happening. It may not come into our physical memory. Now we'll go very quickly through this. We are nearing our end of our time. We spoke about the nature of memory. Now we will speak about the memory of nature. Okay, memory of nature and nature of memory. Nature of memory we have seen from the medical aspect, from the theosophical aspect, from the philosophical aspect. Now what is memory of nature? So theosophy tells us that all the terrestrial events, they are recorded on several subtle planes. We saw this, how the vibrations, they go inward. So the records are stored on the astral plane, that is called the astral light. It is one of the lower differentiation of Akash. And here the impressions stored, they are very fragmentary. They are unreliable, not very reliable. Also, they are reversed. What appears on the terrestrial plane, it will appear reversed on the astral plane. Then the same vibrations going further, they are also stored on the mental plane, higher mental. That is called Akashic records. Those records are more reliable. Although they are very difficult to access, they can be accessed by the higher adepts and the initiates. So that is called as the true memory of nature. Everything that happens on the terrestrial plane, it may be forgotten by our physical or our personal consciousness, personal memory, but it will leave an indelible trace on Akash, which is the memory of nature. And this record, the Akashic record, it can be accessed by the high initiates. Ultimately, every present fact in whatever event which happens on any plane, it is a present fact in the consciousness of Brahma. That is the Brahma consciousness of the logos, past, present, future, are present in his all-embracing consciousness, in his eternal now. But on the physical plane, it is limited into personal memory, only parts of his memory. So personal memory, which we say, it is man is an individual unit of consciousness who is within the universal consciousness. So he is residing in that. And every event which is in the Brahma consciousness, we may come into contact with that. We are wandering in the ocean of Brahma consciousness. And we may come in contact with any part of that Brahma consciousness. So that becomes our personal knowledge. Annie Besant has mentioned that personal memory is nothing. It is merely putting ourselves in touch with the Brahma consciousness. We may contact those memories with different sheets, the various bodies which we have, with different bodies at different times, in the waking state, in the dream state, in the sleep state, and also in the deep sleep state. Because we are living under these restrictions of time and space. Okay, so in the waking time, it is only our physical body through which we can remember things. But in the other states of consciousness, our other vehicles are active and they are able to gather or perceive the vibrations which are coming from the higher planes. So this we have already seen, physical body is the most restrictive, and the subtler the bodies become, the less restrictive they become. So to illustrate this point, consider an art gallery in which there are many pictures. And at night time, so it is total darkness, none of the pictures can be seen. Okay, but a person moves through the hall using a lamp or a candle. And at a time, the light of the candle is illuminating one picture. So that is his personal memory. Okay, the hall is the consciousness, the universal consciousness. All pictures are present in it in the eternal now. But with that lamp illuminating only one picture at a time, that becomes our personal memory. We can see only one thing at a time. When we move to the next picture, that becomes our second perception or the second memory. Okay, but suppose if the light of that candle or the lamp was increased in intensity, then you can perceive maybe 5 or 10 pictures together at a time. This is what happens when consciousness moves to a subtler body, astral or a mental body. The range of perception increases. You can perceive more things than you can at a physical level. So the threshold of consciousness has changed. Okay. Now, coming to this past life memory, the personal memory we've completed, past life memory. Now, when will, so we've seen as consciousness shifts to the subtler bodies, the range of perception or recalling the memory that increases. Now, past life memories, they can be recalled when we work consciously in our causal bodies. Only then our past life memories are recovered. Now, this is interesting, and I'm sure you must have an idea if you have studied Constitution of Man. Why does this happen? Because see, the lower bodies, physical, astral, mental, lower mental, they will perish after physical death. Okay, that is the lower quaternary, it perishes. So there is nothing, no part of these bodies which are carried forward to the next incarnation. It is only the causal body which remains and which is the same in the next incarnation. So whatever is impressed or whatever is stored in the causal body, it will be present in every incarnation. So if you can touch, if your consciousness can touch the causal body, you can recover the memories of past life. Okay. Now, clairvoyance. So when our consciousness comes in contact with universal consciousness, we said we are wandering in this ocean of universal consciousness. And in the universal consciousness, that is same as memory of nature, because everything is present in the here and now. So memory of nature, which we said is Akashic record. So these, due to our spiritual progress, say the adepts or the high initiates, they can turn their attention to any one part of the memory of nature, of the Akashic records, and they can observe it in minute detail. Remember, they also have to focus and turn their attention to the details of any one part, so they can clearly visualize it. They are fully focused on a particular event or an object, and consciousness becomes clearly aware of that object to which they have focused their attention. So this is called clear vision or clairvoyance. Remember, at the level of astral light, it is not reliable. It is very fragmentary. It is colored by the emotions of that person. But at the mental level or at the Akashic level, it is very reliable. Okay, that is the true vision or the clairvoyance. So these are the abilities which any person can gain as they learn to work their consciousness at the higher level. As they progress spiritually, these abilities are gained by any and every person. And then lastly, we come to the memory in the dying. So now what Theosophy has to say about it. We mentioned earlier that everything, the entire life, passes in a flash. So where was that memory? What Madame Blavatsky had mentioned, that no man dies unconscious. A person may be in coma, so we may think that, oh, he died without regaining his consciousness. No, that is not the case. At the last moment, the event of the entire life, even the minute details which that person may have forgotten, or he's already in coma, so he doesn't remember, but they will flash before his inward eye in full detail within split seconds. And this happens just as the body and the physical senses, they are ceasing to function. And intelligence is gradually making its escape. It is leaving through the sensuous, the psychic, and the spiritual consciousness. Okay, sensuous is our sensory consciousness, physical in the body. Then through the psychic, that is astral and mental, and then through the spiritual, higher mental, buddhic. Consciousness is leaving. As it is leaving, this flash comes. So the brain thinks and the ego lives his whole life again. And the reason for this is because at that moment, for those few seconds, the consciousness touches the higher self. It is leaving through sensuous, psychic, and spiritual. So it touches the spiritual consciousness. And for a moment, the highest and the lowest consciousness, they become one. That higher self, that spiritual consciousness, it is the repository of all our experiences. Anything which has entered our consciousness will leave a trace on some of the subtler bodies. So they were never lost. And when our consciousness was escaping, it has touched that higher level. That is why for that moment, when the highest and lowest state of consciousness becomes one, everything blends together. And the dying individual, he finds himself on that plane or on that state where he can see everything. There is no past, no present, no future. Everything is there, and he can see the flash of his entire life that he lived. After that, the spiritual consciousness also leaves, and then unconsciousness sets in. So, you know, those after death states, that is another topic. So, this is the reason why the memory which was there in the person of his entire life was never lost, and he recollected it. And it will be stored in the causal body, and in the next incarnation, that memory will be accessible again. Not only his personal memory, if he grows in consciousness, then wandering in the ocean of the Brahma consciousness, he can make his entire memory same as the Brahma consciousness. So with this, I will conclude today's session. A few minutes are up, I think. We have seen that even our most trifle actions, they are never forgotten. They are always there in our spiritual soul on the subtler planes. Okay, because those planes, they are beyond the space and time that we experience in our lower selves. Therefore, everything, this is what Pythagoras has said, the second point. Pythagoras says that all learning is only remembrance. Everything is already there, we are only remembering it. Learning means we are taking into our individual self, into our separate self, that which is eternally present in the universal self. So this is actually only remembrance. When we attain to our real self is what? It is the Brahma consciousness. So when we attain to our real self, we are merging into that all-embracing consciousness, and therefore all the memories will become our eternal now. Thank you very much. With these words, I conclude today's session. Thank you, Smita.
Hello, madam.
Thank
Yes.
you, Vibhaji.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Sir, madam, I could not follow the Akashic and astral record.
Akashic and astral records.
What is difference between the two, Akashic and astral record? Kindly throw some light.
Okay. See, Akash is all pervading. Akash is the fifth element that we say, right? Fifth cosmic element. Okay, and Akash has 7 differentiations. So astral light is the lower differentiation of Akash, which we can say it pervades from the lowest plane, that is physical plane. It is surrounding the earth, and it extends up to the mental plane. And from the higher mental plane, we can say that the true Akash begins. It extends from higher mental to the higher subtler planes, up to the 7th plane. Okay, so in all, Akash, the cosmic element, has 7 differentiations, and whatever vibrations are produced or whatever events are produced, they are impressed on the subtle matter of Akash. Now, whatever is impressed on the astral light, that is the lower differentiation, the astral light, it surrounds the earth. Okay, but it has the peculiar trait that everything will get reversed. It will be fragmentary. Okay, it will be colored by the emotions and the feelings of the person who's trying to read in that astral light. Okay, but if you go to the higher planes, the higher levels of Akash, reaching the higher mental level, there these impressions are very clear and they can be recollected without any error. So that is the true memory of any event which occurred on the terrestrial plane. Okay, so they are called Akashic records. They will begin from the higher mental onwards. Below that, whatever is there, that is in the astral light, and that will not be very reliable. Although the impression will be on both, on the lower levels of Akash and on the higher levels. I hope this is clear.
Yes, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vibhaji. Thank you for your nice and informative session. And there are various things in your talk. Those actually we knew those things, but how you connected all those things, no? Those things are very nice, and thank you so much, and thank you for your time. And I think we are we are running out of time, but still, if we are open for discussion quickly, if anyone has any doubts or anything, or anyone wants to add anything, then.
May I say a word? May I ask a question, a quick question?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
yes.
just wonder, that we are stuffing in so much of knowledge every day by learning, by attending Zoom calls, by reading, and so on and so forth. Is that taking up so much of our memory space that is one of the reasons why we forget?
Yes, you are right in a way. Am I speaking to Zina Rustamji?
Yes, yes, yes.
Hello, Zina ji.
Hi.
That's a very nice question. What people say memory overload, especially nowadays, the students, they have so much of syllabus to study, academic studies, and other things also. See, people like us, we are exposed to this social media, so much of information on the internet. People, it is called the age of information. And they think that if they do not have the information, they are missing out on something. The fear of missing out, FOMO. Okay, so yes, they are cramming themselves with information, and that is what they are not able to recollect things. Now, the masters have clearly said there are so many things to do, so many things to learn, but you must have the discrimination to know the more important from the less important. That is one point. The second point, which I can recollect from what the masters have said, that they are not bothered by these trivial details, the everyday things around us. They focus on only the actual causes, not these details of the effects. And when they want to actually know a certain thing, they can focus their attention on that particular event or object and get the full details of that thing. So this discrimination is a very important part. What is important to learn and what you want to learn. You need not cram yourself with every information, reading every theosophical book, reading every literature. That is humanly not possible. You should know where you are heading, what will help you in that, and learn and retain that in your memory. That is what I feel. I hope this answers your question.
Oh, thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Vibha ji,
Yes.
Arunima here. Huh?
Hello, Arunima ji. How are you?
Hello, hello. A very nice presentation. Just I want to be cleared about one thing. Is there any difference between recollection and reminiscence?
Sorry, recollection and what?
Reminiscence. Reminiscence, it is also a type of recollections. Reminiscence.
Okay, reminiscence.
Yeah,
Reminiscence
yes.
is, it's just a word, I think, English word, which you're reminiscing about something, trying to recollect.
But in Key2 Theosophy, I found, I may be wrong, Madame Blavatsky said that reminiscence is something which comes from the higher planes, like a flash sometimes, no? From higher planes comes sometimes, just as you described,
Yes.
higher consciousness, there's some memory stored. No,
Yes.
it comes,
Yes.
I think, if I am not mistaken, it is described in Key2 Theosophy.
That is
I think
excellent, Arunima ji. You have answered your own question. So reminiscence means, in this case, then the vibrations which are coming from the higher planes, the internal stimulus. As we said, memory can happen through external stimulus and through the internal vibrations coming from the higher. So that is what she has called as reminiscence. Okay.
Reminiscence. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for telling me.
No. I am nothing. Just I remember. No, that's why I'm asking you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I see Vimalji with a hand raised for a long time. Hello, how are you, Vimalji?
Hi, Vibha. So basically, I didn't think that there'll be so much in this topic. You really extended it beautifully. So nice. It was very nice to hear it all. I just wanted to add a few things from what I have understood about memory, because one thing is that the lower mind and its activities in a way veil us from the deeper knowledge about universal love or those higher perceptions because of the way the lower mind works. So for example, in Alzheimer patients, and I was a caregiver for 5 years of my mother-in-law. Before she had Alzheimer's, she had a lot of issues with me. But as the Alzheimer's became more and more serious, and she became more severe, I found that she was actually being more loving. So in a way, the lack of memory was the stoppage of the lower mind working, and the association with her identity which again, the identity of a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, always they hold on to that identities. We don't see each other as human beings. We first see each other as the identity.
Relation.
So, so I noticed that she actually loved me more when she had Alzheimer's. So I was just saying that memory loss in some ways can also be a good thing, because then you don't know, you're not in touch with that negativity which you always have.
Right. So this is nice to hear, not about that, not that she's unwell, but the fact that yes, she's loving you more. We spoke about the shift in the threshold of consciousness.
Yes.
That happens. Many of these conditions, medical conditions, trigger a shift in the threshold of consciousness.
Yeah.
Good. Nice.
Sister Vibha ji.
Yes, Arvind ji, namaste. Namaste.
Very thanks for this illuminated talk now, that memory. And always we should live in the higher consciousness. This is the message from your lecture now. Always we live in the higher consciousness for all of us now. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? We have Brother Shali from the Philippines. Brother Shali, would you like to add your thoughts?
Smita, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, and I
Okay,
see
then
Shindeji is also here. Shindeji would like to say something before we finally move to the end.
Whether memory is a gift or curse.
Namaste, sir.
Vivaji,
Yes.
whether memory is gift or curse to the humanity.
Memory is gift or curse. When we live our everyday life, so in each incarnation, it is best that we do not remember our past incarnation, because we don't know what we have done. We were still evolving, so we might have committed so many things which we should not have done. And if we are burdened with that in our present life, with that memory, we will not be able to progress. So how God has, or how the higher consciousness or the universal consciousness has created this world to evolve, it is best that we forget the past life in the present life. Okay. But as we spiritually progress and we learn to work for evolution rather than for retardation of other beings, then it is good then, and it is required that our memory becomes wider and broader, and we remember. That is when we work at our buddhic level. So we remember things beyond this space and time. So I think memory is a curse or a boon. It depends on which level we are working, which plane we are working. Sir.
And have you thought over how memory is transferred?
Memory is transferred from where?
One generation to next generation.
Memory is transferred. If we consider our normal ordinary life, then it has to be transferred by learning. So when a teacher is teaching somebody, now in physical sense, I'm talking, a teacher is speaking, the student is learning. So it is through external stimulus. So on the lower level, memory will always come by external stimulus through your 5 sense organs, whatever you have learned. You saw teacher is writing on the board, you heard what he spoke, okay, you yourself wrote it in your notebook. So it is external learning. At the lower levels, mostly it is external learning. Only at the higher levels, it becomes internal learning, where the vibrations from your own higher self come into your physical self. That is why it is said that your higher self is your real guru, because all memory, all perceptions are stored in that, but they have to come down to the physical. And this happens only when you have attained a certain spiritual progress. So learning on physical level will always be external, I think. It will be internal only when you progress higher.
Have you thought over the RNA molecule?
RNA?
Just like DNA.
Yes.
it is this RNA molecule, perhaps one of the theories that transfers memory from the mother to the next generation. Because it is cytoplasmic inheritance. So
Yes.
many traits we carry from the mother.
Correct.
And that memory comes through the RNA molecule. That is what it is. One of the theories says. But what I think, etheric memory actually occurs only in exceptional individuals. It takes pictorial memory of events. This can be called up at will, and picture in the mind eye can be scanned for details. Such images are indeed stored in the mind and not the brain. Again, it is more than brain.
Yes.
Because when we do dhyana, dharana, samadhi, all this, that time, whatever meditation we do, whatever picture we imagine, that is stored in the mind and not in the brain. And whenever it is recalled, we can get that pictorial memory. So that kind of psychological or etheric memory is there, and it is not concerned with the brain. It is more concerned with the mind. That is what I just want to add in it. But you have explained very nicely. Being a technical person, you have explained biologically all those things. Thank you very much. And it is a really interesting talk. Thank you, Vibha.
Thank you, sir. Namaste.
Can
That was
I
a-
ask Shindeji a question?
Yes, Vimalji.
Shindeji, because you were talking about that. So so we know that our sense centers are there in the etheric body. Does the etheric body also have the memory centers?
Yeah. There are etheric centers are there. And the ether, as Vibhaji explained, it can extend up to the mental level. Ether is subtlest and subtlest and subtlest, like that. And those are possible. But as J. Krishnamurti says, we are more loaded with psychological memory. And that is a kind of curse to us. And this is how our mind is conditioned. That memory itself has become a curse. We are not necessarily store them. And therefore it is said very rightly, forgive and forget. It is not so easy to forgive and forget. That is statement itself makes us to contemplate more regarding memory. But memory is definitely a gift, as Vibhaji said. And also it is gift in the sense, in one sense, we don't remember the past life. That is also a kind of gift. So sometimes memory is also not necessary.
In this context, I just recently came across this a writer called Gabor Mate. He's from Hungary, but he lives in Canada, and he's written this book called The Myth of the Normal. So this is all, basically the book is about how each and every one of us have suffered trauma. Even those who say that they've had a relatively good life, at some cause or the other. It could be numerous kinds of things. So he talks a lot about healing from that, and understanding, like what you said about psychological memory, which I think it's very strange. I feel as I'm growing older, this is my perception, that I am going again and again back to many childhood things. I don't know whether it happens to you, sir.
Yeah. It is there always. But there are many, we can say, sames, guilts. They are there deep in our subconscious. Sames and guilts. And that makes us disturbed. And that needs to be awake and aware. of our subconscious memories. Anyway, it is a deep subject. Very nice topic we have selected. Everybody is interested to know what this memory is.
Shinde sir, pranam sir.
Pranam, Naravar.
Sir, may I one my explanation talk in Hindi now?
Yeah.
सर उन्नति रहित मनुष्य मनोमय कोश में बहुत सूक्ष्म मात्रा में दिखाई देता है. What is the reason, sir?
Vibha, you tell you what he says.
उन्नति रहित मनुष्य मनोमय कोश में बहुत कम दिखाई देता है, सर. Very less, sir. Few quantity up.
Vibhaji, will you answer this? What he says?
Sir, I didn't understand the question, frankly. I'm sorry.
Manome, something he told. Okay, I am also not getting clearly.
सर उन्नति रहित मनुष्य मनोमय कोश में बहुत सूक्ष्म मात्रा में दिखाई देता है.
Okay, what this means is somebody who is not spiritually progressed. So obviously his mental level is not evolved. He's still at a very lower mental level. So his mental body will also be of a very low evolutionary state. As you grow intellectually, especially in spiritual and abstract knowledge, like, even great scientists, they have a lot of abstract thinking to do. Mathematicians, even painters, artists, they grow intellectually. The intellectual body becomes very big. A clairvoyant can see it. But for a person who's not evolved mentally to that level, his mental body will be very small. Sukshma dikhai deta hai. That is what I understand. Arvindji, is that fine?
Sister, thank you. Lot of thanks.
In the same manner, those who are on the spiritual level, they can't come on the mental level again. That is also so बहुत काल से वो उन्नत में उधर रहते हैं. That is also possible because H.P. Blavatsky could not understand the persons who are very closer to her that they are cheating, because she was not coming to that lower mind level and how it functions. She was always at the higher level, and therefore the lower mind people, they were cheating her, and she was just forgetting and forgiving. That state was there.
Thank you, sir.
Beautiful and beautiful presentation. It gives a very knowledgeable things. Thank you.
Thank you, Vibhaji. And this was a very nice topic and nice explanation. And
Thank you, Smita.
this was very new to me. And those scientific things were easy to understand, but those spiritual and philosophical, these things, how the nature of memory and how we are limited with the limited memory. So all those things are very new to me. And thank you so much for when I invited you, you agreed to take this session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now we will close the session with the closing prayer. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso jyotirgamaya mrityunam amritam gamaya sarve bhavantu sukhinam sarve santu niramaya sarve bhadrani pashantu मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you Vibha ji again, and thanks all the participants who have joined here. And next week we have this White Lotus Days celebration.
you.
So then we'll
Thank you all.
see you
Namaste.
all next Sunday.
Thank you, Sister Vibha. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.